Weapons Magazine! Hi guys, and welcome back to our latest video on Splatoon 2, and in this episode we're going to be giving you some tips on Splat Zones, which is one of the ranked battles in Splatoon 2. If you like the video, don't forget to like it, share it, subscribe to our channel for more great videos, and tune in for the rest of our tips throughout the rest of the video. So moving on to the first tip of the list, and this is simply just to become a stealth machine. And what this means is you don't need to be kind of standing upright the entire time. You can simply duck under the paint, hide as much as possible, wait for people to get close to you, and you can take them out a lot easier. You're also less of a target when you're kind of under the paint, and it also means you can sneak up on people like this dude. So you can sneak around the corner, wait for somebody to pop up, wait for them to come out of nowhere, and suddenly you got a couple of kills under your belt. And again, you can use it when you're just waiting for people just to come out of the woodwork. You just kind of duck down, hide out of the way, take your time, wait for somebody to come into kind of viewpoint, and then hurry in, get a kill, move away. And you kind of win more matches by doing that. You can kind of skim under the water, you can get out of people's way, you can skim around objects a lot easier, and you just kind of take the fight to them a lot better than you would do if you just walked straight up to people. It's a huge tip. It's one that you need to practice, get a little bit better at. Try and find some nice spots to kind of lurk, and we'll come back to lurking a little bit later, but you're kind of essentially waiting for other players to come into view. When they come into view, hit them hard, take them out of the way, and you can keep the timeline moving in the right direction. So moving on to our second tip of the day, which is to use high ground for your attacks. So this is simply, if you can get above people, then you've got a better chance of getting in more kills. So using high vantage points, which is a tip that we kind of shared in our Rainmaker video, but here's a few examples of us using it in the Splat Zones Ranked Battle. So just using high zones and high points allows you to drop down on people. It also gives you, again, a bit more sort of shelter. You can kind of skim around here in Kelp Zone, just walk around, walk straight up to them, and there you go, you get in a few kills. And it's a really useful tip to use on a regular basis if you can. It's not necessarily easy to do all the time. There's not always perfect high ground, but if you can drop in on people, hit them up with a big hit fast, then you can clear out a lot of enemies really quickly. And there you see, just kind of dropped in, jumped up there, take them out, and then you can take up another position. So again, just working on some high ground, taking in a position, looking to see where people are, and there you can see just kind of dropping in, taking somebody out really nice and easily. And kind of you're going to get splatted yourself every now and again, but if you work the angles in terms of the high ground as much as possible, then you'll probably be in a much better position. So that's a really important one. So now moving on to our third tip, which is to press for the advantage. Once you've taken the splat zones, it's not good enough just to wait it out and where you are. The best thing you can do in that situation is, once you've cleared everybody out, is press into their part of the turf. Kind of take up a nice position, wait for them to kind of launch on in, and again, using your stealth technique, you can just jump in, get in some kills. And admittedly, you're not going to kill everybody, but it kind of just slows them down, and it helps you to keep the clock ticking, and it also gives you a chance to take out those nasty snipers, which for me are they're the bane of the game. But they make it kind of interesting, so it's really good to press for the advantage where you can. So sometimes it's just a case of sneaking up on them, like this guy. Here we go, there we go, just getting in a couple of hits there. And yeah, I died in the end, but the important thing is I took one of their players out and allowed the clock to keep ticking in my direction, which is what it's all about. So again, just sort of sneak around, take somebody out, move into a better position, and keep trying to clear out the enemy and allow your clock to get a little bit closer to the remaining time. And by doing that, you'll just end up winning way more matches. And it takes a little bit of time, but if you can time it nicely, then you can just sort of skim around, take a couple of players out, and allow yourself to get a little bit closer to the win. So tip number 4, it's very similar, but it's essentially rounding your enemy. Don't just sort of approach them head on. you've got to kind of use the angles, work the entire length of the pitch. That sounded a bit football-y. And kind of use the space that you've got to kind of get behind them, and by doing that you'll allow yourself to take out the snipers for a start, which is really important in this game, but also allow you to kind of get more kills in general. So using the entire space, get around the back of the enemy, and you can drop in and just do some really big damage, which is really useful. So here you can see just sort of sneaking up, coming around, taking up position, waiting for them to come in. And it looks like I'm going to get killed, but actually because I've rounded them and gotten right up in their face, they ended up going. So moving on to tip number 5, keep the clock running. So this is all about keeping the time going as much as possible. So here it could just be as simple as taking out as many of the enemy to keep your timeline going. And actually, you know, that particular match, we went on and won that, even though we were like 60-3. So it's really important to keep that clock ticking as much as possible, and by doing that you'll ensure that you just get lots closer to the win. And rounding the enemies, another good way to keep the clock running, so just kind of getting up in their face, taking players out as much as possible, and then getting back in and taking up a great position to be able to kill as many of the enemy as they come in. So there you go, you can see this opposition dude coming in, and just you spin around and take him out. So by keeping the timeline running, just allows you to win more games, and focusing on that as a concept is really, really important. So you can see here, just again pressing for the advantage really well. You can see while we're kind of up in their face, the clock's continually ticking just that little closer to the win. And brilliant, there you go, you know, you get the win. So you know, other ways to keep the clock ticking is make sure that you take out the trash, so to speak. You've got to get right up in people's faces, you've got to get the kind of zone to begin with. So there you go, you can see if we hadn't taken that zone back, they would have been a hell of a lot closer to the win. And by getting right up in their faces, taking out the wins, you know, suddenly we're in a position where we can actually challenge for the game, which is, you know, not necessarily easy when they've started out quite well. But by keeping on, kind of not giving in, keep pressing for the time, you allow yourself to get closer and closer to being able to win more matches. And there you go, you just sort of, again, clearing people out and trying to keep that clock ticking. So moving on to tip number 6, and this is, you know, just essentially use your environment. There's a lot of obstacles that you can hide behind, you can get up, you can get around, and it just allows you to just stay alive for a little bit longer. Force the enemy into making mistakes like there, you know, you can just wait for the kill. And there again, I'm using the obstacle and being able to get in more kills because they can't hit me when I'm behind something. And by being able to use the environment, you're able to not get killed as much, but also get in way more kills yourself. So you're able to get in a lot more splats, and just, you know, you'll surprise yourself how many more splats you can get by focusing on that. So another big tip, so number 7, is priming your special weapon. This involves when you've got the environment, when you've got the splat zone all to yourself, it's about kind of priming your weapon. So make sure you're building up as much of your paint. And there you go, you can see it's primed there, but actually by priming this I managed to take out a few of the enemies, and there you go, there's a few more just taken out there. Once you're able to prime your kind of your super weapon, your special weapon, you're able to drop in and just look. You don't need to get close to be able to cover ground and make it difficult for them, get in splats here and there, but it just allows you to sort of focus a little bit more on not necessarily being right in the thick of things, but sometimes just hanging back, getting your special weapon primed, and getting in as much paint as possible. And by doing that, you just make it more difficult for them to win. So, tip number 8. You've got to be ready for their special weapons as well. So they're going to do the exact same. And sometimes they're all just going to come at the same time, and you just got to get out of the way. Avoid it as much as possible. There you can see the sniper's weapon just moving out of the way. And if you can do that, then it's just going to make it easier to win. So tip number 9, watch out for lurkers. These are essentially either snipers just hanging back and trying to take you out, or they're people just waiting to hit you, much in the same way that we did in tip number 1. But if you can kind of keep an eye on where they might be, understand what they're doing or what they're trying to do, then you can make it difficult for them to do it. So a big part of this is taking out the snipers, because they can honestly completely and utterly decimate a game unless you focus on taking them out. If you let the snipers take control of a splat zone, then you've got no chance, absolutely no chance of winning games. So kind of making sure you understand where lurkers are, and you can see there that guy was pretty much right up close to the base, and that's sometimes what happens. You've seen me doing it myself a little bit early on in the video, so it's something to really focus on. So finally, tip number 10, sub-weapons. Keep them firing. Don't let any of the pressure go. Once you've taken the zones, you can fire in sub-weapons, cause them a lot of trouble, get in the splats, and just make them get really confused about where they are. And if everybody on your team is kind of working in the same direction, then it's a really good opportunity. So there you go, that's all of our tips for this video. Hopefully you'll be a bit better in Splat Zones going forward, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos in the future. Okay, so hopefully you've liked the video, and if you do, then don't forget to hit that like button and share the video with anybody you think also needs to work on their Splat Zones tips. And if you've got any comments, make sure you leave them below. Cheers guys, goodbye. Magazine!